Good morning, this is Michael Leahy of the Irish Freedom Party speaking to you from lockdown Ireland. I hope you're all getting through it as best you can. Has it occurred to you over the past 4 or 5 weeks that many state and corporate actors are using this crisis as a means of pushing particular political agendas? For example, how many times have we heard over the past number of weeks that things will never be the same again in a post-coronavirus world, in a post-coronavirus Ireland? We are told, new ways of doing things, new ways of conducting business. And that hoary old phrase that we've heard so often in the past, a new world order, is beginning to emerge from many international actors. Now, not surprisingly, all of these new ways of doing things tend to involve greater levels of state control, greater levels of corporate control being given to large multinational corporations, often with very dubious records, suppression of the free market system, the free market private enterprise system, which has done so much over the past years to create prosperity and wealth for the entire world. Now, I'm not saying that this whole process is fraudulent. C-19 is very real and it must be dealt with. But there's equally no doubt that the crisis as it stands at the moment is being used by some very cynical actors. To justify that, I would like to point out the following. Many predictions have been made over past years of a deliberate effort to crash the economy in order to justify the introduction of greater government control. Many predictions have been made that private enterprise, a small person, would be left penniless in the wake of the next economic heave. Many predictions have been made that would suggest that an excuse would be found to introduce a level of coercion, which governments would then be very slow to relinquish. It is also obvious that during a time of fear and panic, that people are more likely to be led into a coercive totalitarian form of government. The dictum of Benjamin Franklin comes to mind, that those who sacrifice freedom for security will end up with neither, and it may be that they deserve to end up with neither. I believe that there has been a somewhat cynical misuse of crisis. We will never know whether the coronavirus was started deliberately. We will probably never know that. We'll never know, even if it was accidental, whether or not the Chinese government deliberately used the situation in order to undermine the West. But clearly the West has been opportunistic in its response. They have well adopted the dictum that you should never waste a good crisis. They have now introduced a level of coercion that only a few months ago nobody would have believed to be possible. The date of our release from the exacting restrictions under which we all operate keeps getting pushed back further and further. I have little doubt that as we go forward, further crises will emerge which will be used to justify the retention of these restrictions and perhaps greater restrictions. The so-called global warming crisis is the obvious case in point. Many of us have over the years, and I have to admit that having done this myself, we've engaged in the harmless pursuit of following conspiracy theories. The essence of a good conspiracy theory, however, is that it always contains a grain of truth, no matter how absurd its final conclusions may be. But in a peculiar fashion, what has panned out over the past 4 to 5 weeks, much of what was often dismissed as being highly far-fetched, has now come to pass. For example, the introduction for an indefinite period of time of police state powers. There's no limit to when these powers will be ended. In our case, they've been introduced for 2 years. Who would guarantee that they would not be extended if a coronavirus vaccine has not been found in that time? The crashing of the Western economic system, the destruction of the price of oil, now trading incredibly at $1 a barrel. Open talk of mandatory vaccinations in the hands of private companies, again, many with very, very dubious track records in these areas. Open talk of the use of nanotechnology, human body implants to act as viral passports. The use of high technology and artificial intelligence to track the movements of people being justified by the pandemic. The introduction of a cashless economy, and there are serious dangers in that. And the development of unsustainable levels of debt by hitherto stable Western countries. Restrictions on freedom of association and right to protest. Only a few weeks ago, many of these would have been considered much too far-fetched to be taken seriously. We have seen, remarkably, that they have now been enacted and are in the process of being enacted. So I'm afraid even if when one of these was justified by the pandemic, the fact that all of them are coming together suggests that there may indeed have been a grain of truth in the conspiracy theories that until very recently we all laughed at. My concern about the coronavirus when it first emerged onto the scene at the beginning of the year was not so much about the virus itself, but I was deeply concerned at the manner in which government would react to it. This reaction has the potential to destroy our entire system of government, our entire legal system, and to completely destroy private wealth. For that reason, during the midst of this crisis, we must hold government to account. It appears to be increasingly obvious that the government does not know how to get us out of the self-inflicted wound that they have imposed upon us. And I believe that that self-inflicted wound is largely unnecessary. The lockdown will be the cause of severe collateral damage, and we need to challenge government at the legal level, at the political level, and by public protest. In conclusion, I would say that we must never allow this crisis to be used as an excuse for the introduction of a totalitarian society, even in the short term. This is Michael Leahy of the Irish Freedom Party, urging you to get involved with your local representative and to make your concerns on this matter felt. Thank you very much.